Hey everyone. We just published a blog post about the Austrian Data Protection Authority ruling Google Analytics illegal in Austria. So, if you'd rather read than watching me and my stage plan behind me tell you about this, then the link to the blog post is in the comments below. What exactly is going on? Case has been filed by a privacy organization called None of Your Business. They filed cases all across Europe, but the Austrian DPA is one of the first to react. And basically, the reaction is that Google Analytics, in the way it was implemented in this model case example, is not compliant with the GDPR, with the European privacy laws. So, to be honest, it's not really a surprising reaction, in my opinion, mostly because the implementation, the way it was done, as far as we can see from the ruling, is in the most basic way with the script just directly implemented on the website without any customizations. So the GDPR was introduced in May 2018, and ever since, at least we have been implementing Google Analytics in a more customized way that hopefully respects the user privacy better. So I don't want to dive too deep into the case, the ruling, and all the details around it simply because it's very complicated. I can't give you legal advice anyway. And I think there's many more rulings to come, so this landscape will change over time. If you want to dive into the ruling itself, I found a great website called GDPR Hub. I'll link to it in the blog post as well. You can dive in deeper, and also I found some articles from Corey Underwood, who's always a good resource to follow on anything data and privacy and tracking related. So dive into those blog posts if you want to zoom in on that topic. What I want to focus on is what you can do as an organization in order to prepare for what's coming. So I've created a 9-step plan that I think every organization should try to implement in order to be compliant, or at least make sure that you have control over everything that you fire in order to stay up to date with recent rulings. So let's dive in. First of all, you want to list all the scripts that are on your website. Sounds easy. Most of the time it's harder than you think, but you want to figure out what scripts are firing where. So you could use a tool like taginspector.com, or you could, talk to your developers, see what's in the code base. But basically, you want to figure out what are all the scripts that are firing on our website, on what pages are they firing. So that's step one. Get a big list of what is firing. And then the second step is to figure out who's responsible for those scripts. So the bigger the organization, the larger and the older the website, the more legacy scripts you're going to find. And hopefully, in a lot of cases, nobody's responsible for them and nobody's using them, which means you can actually speed up your website and delete those scripts. Yeah, you want to figure out who owns those scripts, what they're for, who's using them, and put that in that list. And then the third step would be to move as much as possible to Tag Manager. The exercise is about gaining control of what's firing on your website. Tag Manager is ideally suited for that. You don't want to be dependent on your IT department for these kind of things. So get as many tags as possible moved from hard coded into Tag Manager only pixels. The fourth step, in my opinion, would be to implement server side Tag Manager. So Google server-side tag manager is relatively new, but the benefit that it gives you is pretty big, especially with regards to the GDPR, because what it allows you to do is it basically creates your own data collection endpoint in between the user browser and the third-party vendor. So normally Google Analytics, for instance, will be implemented on your website, and whenever a user visits the website, the Google Analytics script would be directly called from the Google Analytics website and the hit would be sent there. And with server-side tag manager, we're actually creating this portal in between of which you are the full owner, right, of the data that's within that portal and everything that goes on in there. It's all owned by your company. And yeah, you get to alternate the data before you send it to the third party vendor, which is really important, right? Because if we want to anonymize IP addresses, for instance, that's a great way to do it. And this way it can never even end up with Google. So once we have a server-side tag manager set up, of course, we want to make sure that we run as many tags as possible via a server-side client. So not all tags support this yet. Google Analytics does though. And it's, in my opinion, more and more vendors will support something like this in the future. So investing in making sure that you use that is crucial. And this basically means that instead of loading Google Analytics, the Google Analytics script from googleanalytics.com, you're actually loading it from your own server-side tag manager instance, and you are sending the data to your own tag manager instance before sending it to the Google Analytics service to be processed, right? And that extra step, that's what's crucial because that allows you to alternate the data before it ends up with Google. So once we've done that, then the step number 6 is to implement a consent management platform. So cookie bar. If you serve EU clients, then you probably should already have one. Can be something as simple as Cookiebot or something as elaborate as OneTrust. But you basically want to have a way to ask users for consent before you fire marketing pixels or any pixels for that matter. Right? You want to have the proper consent before you do anything. That's basically the GDPR, right? And then the seventh step is to actually integrate that consent management platform with your tag manager solution. So whenever we do audits, we see this all the time. A cookie banner pops up, and regardless of whether we click accept or deny, or we even ignore the cookie banner, all pixels are actually already firing in the background. So it's just for show, it's not integrated. That's not going to work anymore. This needs to actually work. You need to integrate this. We actually wrote a blog post about this a couple weeks ago about Google Consent Mode. So that's also linked in the blog post below. So once that's integrated, then the next step is to block everything by default. And what I mean by that is within Tag Manager, you want to make sure that when everything goes wrong or when your consent management platform isn't loading or whatever is the case, when something goes wrong, you want to by default go into a blocking state and not fire pixels. And then the last step, which is how this whole thing started, once you have server-side tag manager implemented, you want to make sure that Google Analytics is firing with anonymized IP on and also with the advertising features disabled by default. And doing this in server-side tag manager is really easy and a really solid way to do this. So if you complete these 9 steps, I think you have a really great setup. You have a lot of control over how your data is firing, and you're basically ready for whatever the European DPAs are going to throw at you, because they will throw stuff at you in the next couple of years. This is just the first ruling. There are going to be many more. This ruling is based on old software, Universal Analytics. We're moving to GA4. There's going to be new rulings based on GA4. GA4 will change. Google will make new steps. So this game is far from over. And I think the only way to play it for you as an organization is to get control over how you are firing things and to make sure that whenever there's a new ruling, you're not scared. You're just evaluating what do we need to change, easily change it, and go on with the rest of your business. So I hope this helps to make clear what can you do, what could be the next steps for you as a company. If you need help with this, or if you just want to spar with me on how could we do this for our company, there's a link at the bottom of the blog post where you can schedule a call with me. We can figure out like, hey, how could you do this? Or perhaps how could we help you if needed? Yeah. Also, this is a new thing we're doing, videos. Let me know if you like this content format, if you have any feedback, or if you have any other things we should discuss in the video. And I guess that's it. Thanks.